Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel. Now, talk about what, as you've gone in there, not everything has turned out. What are problems you've run into? You got your staff listening here, so we're not going to talk about problems you've had with your staff. But what problems have you? What are things that have just disappointed the heck out of you, or you went out there and it would appear like you've had skyrocket growth. We all know that, you can have overall growth, but you can have slumps and derailments during the process. What are some of those derailments? When you're the CEO, you've got to take ownership of those.
Yeah, I see my job as making really 4 groups of people happy. And the first group is the owner, the shareholders, which is just me. So that one's relatively stress-free. The other group, or the 2 most important groups, are the employees and the clients. And then the kind of ancillary groups are the partners and the freelancers. And so the biggest challenges have always been when we haven't delivered on our mission, which is to make team members or employees and clients happy. And so whenever any one of these groups of people, or whenever the individuals in those groups are unhappy, those are the trickiest times. And if that consistently happens, because sometimes people can be happy because of it's been unlucky or something that we couldn't ever plan for. But then if there's consistent unhappiness in either of those groups, then there's something wrong with the system that you have. And so the hardest times have been where there's been systemic issues that have led to unhappiness in those 2 groups of people.
And I know that startups create a lot of those things, and your overall business has been a startup, but you started bCast. What is bCast?
bCast is a podcast hosting tool. And so what people may know about podcasts is that the audio actually doesn't sit with Apple Podcasts or with any of the other directories. It sits on a server that you would typically own, and then Apple Podcasts pulls the audio from that server. And so this is called podcast hosting software. And so at a similar time to when we started Fame, we saw a gap in the market for podcast hosting software. And then Fame has essentially funded the build of this application that we obviously give for free for all our clients. And then we're able to build stuff into that helps us with our specific podcasting process. So yeah, currently a separate brand called bCast. It's blue, and then Fame is pink. But bCast is wholly owned and maintained by Fame.
And so what kind of situations have you gone through with that? Because that's a technical type operation, and glitch, as we all know, technical things take a while to become reliably built. And so what are things you've run into there?
Here's a really good point that I recently realized is that there's kind of 4 types of leverage you can use as an entrepreneur. And I'm like heavily utilizing 2 and then not utilizing the other 2. And that's because I'm skilled in the first 2 and not in the second 2. So the first 2 that I am skilled at is people. So the 4 years in management consulting, all this like leadership culture stuff, it's what I love, is what I'm good at. Second is media. So there's the impressions on LinkedIn, for example. So those 2 pieces of leverage are being used. Now the 2 that I'm not so good at is capital, e.g. we haven't raised any money. We're fully bootstrapped. And then the other one is software. Again, like I'm not technical myself. I have some like product management skills, but not really. And so if, let's say I spent 4 years not like doing people and organizational stuff, but I spent 4 years coding, right, maybe Fame wouldn't actually exist and we would just have a software company because I'll be using that leverage more. So yeah, there's definitely been issues, and it's definitely not the strength of the organization.
And so how do you mitigate? How do you turn that into a strength?
That's a very good question, and one that I should probably think more about.
Because a chain will break at the weakest link.
I think partnering technology with a great human business can be very valuable. So I think it's still worthwhile having the application. But in terms of how we would turn that into a strength, I think I have to think more about that.
Well, the thing is, I think you might be onto the right idea there, because partnering is something all big companies do. The only reason that like YouTube, Google. Remember when Google bought YouTube for like $350 million or something, and people are going, "What a bunch of idiots!" Why would they? Who's going to be interested in cat videos? And now I think it's turned into a pretty good buy for Google. They didn't have to just go out there and create their own. They partnered up. And so you see this all the time. There's a great weather app that we all used to love. Even forget the name of it now, but now it's part of Apple, and they just bought it, brought it in. But you see this happening all the time because it's a good model. And especially that's why professionals, when they graduate from school with a medical degree or attorney, they pass the bar, they go to work with a existing company for a while. They partner up until they get their legs underneath and their strength, and then they've learned the ropes, so they move out there. So that's a possibility. But as things, how do you get yourself excited about doing things you don't want to do, knowing that you've got, there's a certain amount of investment you're going to have to make in it to solve the problem? How do you get yourself excited about doing things you don't want to do?
One of my highest values as a person is growth. And so what excites me about the whole business thing, it isn't necessarily like looking good or getting money. It's more like the person I would have to become in order to achieve that thing. So the personal growth. And so with the LinkedIn thing, I was like, well, these other people that are doing it, they're not that much better than me, but I am going to have to improve, obviously, because I'm not getting the results at the moment.
Right.
And that was just quite exciting, like the innate process, like thinking if now 100,000 followers, and I think to myself, how could I get to 500,000 followers by the end of the year? Like the person that I would have to be to do that excites me. So I think maybe that's fortunate. I have this innate like excitement or passion for trying to do stuff that I haven't done before, which is probably the answer to like why I'm an entrepreneur or why I'm building this business.
Now, in that, and you referred to this earlier, is interacting with other people, not just coming up with new content, but interacting with other people. Do you target the people that have the biggest followers, and as far as interacting there, because that gives you another excuse to kind of follow them and pay attention to them? Or are you just interacting randomly?
So there's benefit to commenting on other posts that are going to get a lot of exposure, because your comment will likely get more exposure. So that's one of the reasons why I would comment on people's posts that are more popular.
Yeah.
But I only do it if I actually like the person and I like the stuff they post. It's not big creators that post stuff I think is complete rubbish. And then what I also do is if I see people consistently commenting on my posts, then I'll go and comment on theirs, just because it's nice. I want to follow their journey. They're being nice to me.
Yeah.
Now, the added benefit of commenting on people that have a big following is that that same thing would happen in that they'll start to like you, and then in theory, they'll come and comment on your posts. And that's a big driver of growth, is the audience of the people that comment.
Yeah.
Because if someone has a massive audience and they comment on a post, then that post will be shown to a percentage of their audience.
Yeah.
And that's how you get more reach.
Yeah. And I think there's a lesson for us in the an extension of the lesson, like the people, they say, who are your 5 people you spend the most time with, and what are their income and their success levels? That's going to influence yours. But it can be the same. It can relate to the same thing on social media. Who are the 5 or 10 that you interact with the most and follow the most? And in your experience, would you say after this 4 or 5 month exposure, it has a direct impact on in terms of the transformation process of you becoming someone who would have the 100 million views and follows?
I think I have changed as a person. I think I have evolved since starting doing this in Jan. And maybe that's just like specific knowledge about LinkedIn, but it's also probably a better understanding of humans, I think.
Yeah.
To really get posts that like pop off and get 10 million impressions, there's like a lot going on in the post, even though it might look quite simple. So I think, yeah, I have evolved.
Yeah. And, what's interesting about this, Tom, is this is a journey you've gone on by yourself. It's not like you took your whole company with you on. It's like you're in the world of LinkedIn and you're following these people that have bigger exposures, bigger audiences, and you're noticing things. It's a lot of this in life has to do with what you put your eyes on and what you follow. That's how babies develop. They just look at you, and they're just following. And, I remember when my great nephew down in Georgia, when he was born, he would just look at you like this. And I said, what kind of monster is he going to turn into? And he actually turned into a fun kid. But as a baby, he was just like, he was taking everything in. He would just not move. But a lot of this has to do with what you set your eyes on. And I think, speaking for myself, looking at social media, which is hard to get myself excited about it, because when you look in there, there's a lot of things that are thrown at you by their algorithm. And it's like, I'm not interested in this crap. Why do they, this feed, but you can tailor your search and just ignore all that stuff right there and just say, this is who I'm going to, if this is a big party, I'm going to gravitate over to this side of the room and keep my attention over here. And it takes a while to learn how to do that, but you can control your experience and learn things from people that it is worth your time, and you will look forward. Do you find yourself now looking forward now that you've identified people on LinkedIn that have the big following, that you do agree with a lot of their posts? They're not it really sucks your soul away to some of the stupidity that people will put out there. And you just like, you want to tear your hair out, because people are listening to this and taking it as a gospel truth, and it's just total nonsense. But you can ignore those, and you can find people that really have something valid to say and focus on that. And do you find yourself now having some anticipation about going in and seeing what they came up with today or something?
Probably like 5 people.
I'm going to get you to send me those five names. I'm going to try and save time.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying at the start of this episode that I was clever for using my podcast for learning stuff, right? But I think this is what we're doing here.
For those of you who are sick and tired of fooling around and are dead serious about wanting to move up fast, I've got something especially for you. I've combined the best insights from over 40 years in business and making $70 million in income and compressed them into a free webinar. That's right, it's a free resource. If you want to find out exactly what the concepts are that I use in coaching $1 million earners, register now at weidelonwinning.com. You'll discover the 5-part framework used by so many to reach their financial, personal, and professional goals. You can find that link in this episode's show notes. And see, that's what, but a telltale sign is who you get on your podcast, And so, that's, because I'm sure that's not an accident. The guest selection that I have on my podcast is by design as much as possible, and drive you guys nuts with wanting to get the cream of the crop of high producers. And by the way, I found 2 more of them today myself. But
really? How did you find them?
Well, I've been stalking one since she was 17 years old and came out to Trump Golf and started playing. She was like this 6-foot Amazon young teenage girl out there. And now she's gone on and had a tremendous career in the LPGA world, Lexi Thompson. And, you don't want to, she started showing back up. I've only been out there the last 2 months since I've been back from Aspen. And she's been out there 3 or 4 times, but getting lessons on the driving range. and I haven't wanted to interrupt her. So I was waiting for a time. And sure enough, this morning, I drove out to the driving range. She was coming off. Her cart was right next to mine. And I said, boom, boom, boom. She said, yeah, I remember seeing you around, So she not only agreed to get on the podcast, but gave me her manager. And it turned, I looked him up and he's a management, he's got a management company where he's got a lot of the men, top men golfers. So we're going to see about getting him, and then he would be an entree into some of those other golfers. But we see some of those out at Trump anyway. But yeah, it's fun to dial in, because when you get someone who has high achievement, that was not an accident. And if you see someone, go back to LinkedIn, and you see that in the business world, they've got lots of people following them, that's probably not going to be an accident. And it's probably going to be, even though there's going to be some people that have just get it through personality and nonsense, there's probably the people that have the followers have something to say, and they're the ones that kind of earn the right to have you pay attention to them. So as you go, what would you advise people? There's one thing to get all this noise, but how do you now turn the podcast and the LinkedIn and the social media into, what suggestions have you found that are ideas to work with in turning this into sales funnels, to get people, actually, you referred to it earlier, like that you had lots of followers, but they not necessarily was turning into phone calls about the business. So how do you recommend people that are podcasters with you, or what you've learned from how to engage people with your posts that would cause them to have an interest in coming over to your business?
Yeah. So our belief is that we just want the ideal buyers, we just want them to start to know, like, and trust us. And if we can do that, then ideally when they come around to wanting to buy our thing, they're going to come to us. But the way we can speed up that process is with 80% of the content, just get them to know, like, and trust us. Don't really ask for anything. And then with 20% or maybe just 10%, we are very clear about the thing we sell.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about my LinkedIn presence, because I don't have that third part, I have the first two. I have the thing I'm passionate about. I have the thing I'm doing every day, but I don't have the thing that we sell, because I'm talking about remote work, but we sell podcasts. Yeah. So I am getting people to know, like, and trust me, but I'm not really telling them enough about what we do. And so what I should be doing, and what I will be doing soon, is maybe one post a week or one post every 2 weeks is going to be like a case study. Here's how we grew a client's podcast, for example. So that's what I'm going to start doing on LinkedIn. For my podcast, what I do is, I've just been 4 years with bi-weekly, now it's weekly. The episode is like pure, like, there's no ads, or the content is not about fame at all. It's about B2B entrepreneurs, B2B marketers. Then I do mention fame in the intro and outro that I do. Right. And so anybody listening to an episode is going to be aware of what fame does.
Yeah.
So it's just this balance of getting people to know, like, and trust you by giving them information that helps them. But then for a small portion of that, we have to tell them how we make money and what they can do to work with us.
Yeah. You have to find a way to get that in there. You don't have to be annoying about it, but you do have to be definite that you're in business, right?
Exactly. And if anybody likes the content, they should also be happy to engage with that or consider that, because they must know that the content's only there because someone's paying money somewhere, And so if people truly love your content, then they're going to want to do business with you.
Now I'm going to give you a moment to just tell people why they should if they don't have a podcast, they ought to think about a podcast.
I'll tell a story for this. In that 4-year period of like doing online marketing, I had this business, and it was kind of like a tech startup thing. And every day I would release a 5 to 10 minute solo episode of like what I was doing, what I was building. I'd actually batch record them at the weekend and then release one every day. And the business didn't end up working that well. But the podcast, it was called 0 to 4 million startups bootstrap journey to a 7-figure exit or something. And so it got a decent amount of traction, actually. I was quite happy with it. And what surprised me was that the people that were listeners how like bought in to the journey and how much they liked me or could be influenced by me. And that was because I was in their ears every morning. And so we actually had people, one guy specifically, I can't remember his name, but it was like trying to give us money, was trying to invest in the startup, even though it's a rubbish idea. And so that's the power of the intimate connection that can be generated through the audio/video medium.
Yeah.
And so, in my opinion, every B2B business should take one person, could be CEO, could be head of sales, could be head of customer success, that we just need everybody in the market to get to know, like, and trust them. And it starts with social, and then we can add that email bit in the middle. That's kind of optional. But the bottom part, the part where you really get people to know, like, and trust you, is the podcast.
And I wonder if you're like a New York Stock Exchange company, really, Fortune 500 company, you wonder if putting a human face, you have the CEO turns over every 5 years, usually there, you wonder who that face should be. But you do feel like if there was some personality come out there, it'd be easier for people to identify with it. But the question comes to, like, who should that be?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be the CEO. It could be the founder. It just has to be someone that has passion for the subject matter and
Yeah.
has relatively good communication skills.
Yeah. When you think of yourself as having good people skills, how do you think that manifests itself? How would you describe that to someone who is autistic and they have no
Yeah.
idea what people skills are?
I think it's understanding how someone feels and then tailoring your communication to, I want to say, maximize the good feelings. I think that's the core of my skill set, I think, is understanding where they are and then communicating to ideally make them feel better. And so there's two things there. A is like understanding how someone feels, and then B, it's selecting the vibrations or the words you say to ideally change how they feel.
It has to do with what I'm hearing you say there is the ability to connect with people in a positive way. Would that be safe?
Yeah, I think that's probably a more concise way of saying it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I had the benefit of following you. Anyway, so Tom, you've watched our podcast grow up over the last few years. What kind of advice can you give me?
I think I like your hosting skills.
Thank
I
you.
don't think anything needs to be changed there. They're like conversational, like not scripted at all, really. I think you have like some idea of what you want to talk about, but then you roll around it. So I don't think we need to change anything on the hosting skills. And I actually maybe don't think we would change anything with the podcast. Like we have the guest, you're like super clear on who the ideal guest is.
Yeah.
I think the next step is to like take one of the social channels and try and blow it up organically.
Yeah.
Because it will help with other objectives. It will help grow the podcast.
Yeah.
And so then we have to think about which one it would be. And maybe we spoke about this before, but I've selected LinkedIn and Twitter because I don't think I'm that charismatic or that good on video. So they're like written platforms, basically. I think you're more charismatic and probably better on video. And so that opens up other options, e.g. TikTok, Instagram. Have you thought about if you could only do one platform, which one you would do?
No, and I don't know, where my target market audience would be the most, in terms of entrepreneurs or leaders, high achievers. I don't know where they would be. But now we have the ex-president on TikTok. And so I guess everything is fair game.
You're totally right. That's the other very important part. It's like where's the highest density of the ideal customers/listeners.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's interesting for you. It depends on the age. I think they're like the entrepreneurs on all platforms and maybe in relatively similar densities,
Yeah.
but it's just split out by age. And maybe the oldest is on Twitter and then LinkedIn, and then these video ones will be younger. So it depends kind of what's the ideal age.
And do you recommend focusing in on one?
100%. Like the benefits of getting it right are so massive that diverting your focus to try and get multiple to work just makes zero sense.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that they're so different. Like even Twitter and LinkedIn, one of the post I did on Monday, now is on like 10 million impressions. It would get like 1,000 impressions on Twitter. Now,
Really?
admittedly, I have a lot less followers over there,
Yeah.
but they're so different. And so if you take the two things into account, like the upside of getting one working is incredible, and each platform is so different. The output of that is that it just doesn't make any sense to divert efforts and focus to try and get multiple to work.
How would you give a quick summary? We've got to go, but a quick way for people to understand the difference between, other than TikTok younger, but of course we have the YouTube shorts as well. Rather than taking one video and post it, boom, 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 and just see which one takes off. I mean, should you run an experiment like that yourself and see which style you like to work in, which platform it works better on, or what's the different uniqueness in these platforms?
There's one easy distinction, which is the written first platforms versus video first platforms. So that's Twitter and LinkedIn are written first, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and I don't even count Facebook. I don't think that's worthwhile. They're like video first. And so that's easy. That's the easy distinction to make.
Yeah.
But then to understand which one you should focus on or the difference between any of those, you just literally have to test it. And if you post daily to all the video ones or post daily to LinkedIn and Twitter, within a couple of weeks, you'll have a good understanding.
Yeah. I think one way to go about it is to run your own test and just see, number one, what do you enjoy doing, the written or the video, and also put it out there and just see where the response is. Like if you're a musical group, you take your act on the road and see where you get the response. So Tom, thanks so much for all of this. I always like to give my guests the last word. So what would you say, any last thing, thought for people that want to do something big with their life, and maybe they've already started, maybe they're thinking about it. Any last word to pass on to them?
Something that's always worked for me is that try to think less before taking action. Like the real value of, or like the whole thing, whatever you're planning on doing, is going to be a big learning process, and you only start learning when you start doing stuff. So I would do less planning and more doing, because that just speeds up the learning.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Tom. Let's look forward to seeing how your journey unfolds. I know it's going to be, you've already said growth is one of your core values, and it needs to be for all of us, because if you're not growing, you're dying. And so it's going to be fun to see you grow, because you set the pattern in motion. The success pattern in motion is just a matter of staying on track. And I think your dog has got a lot of lives left to go. So I think you're set up for success for a long time, man.
As long as Bear is alive and is being photographed on LinkedIn, then it's going to be fine. Larry, I want to thank you so much for having me on again. It's an honor.
You're very, very welcome. And thank you for all you and your staff do to make these programs work. Look forward to the next time. Goodbye.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you for listening to the final part of this episode of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. Great ideas don't care who uses them. If you're motivated to move up in a big way, right now, I've created a free training video to remove the mystery on how to set yourself up for big success. This is the information that has changed so many of our lives, and it can have the same impact on you, and the video is completely free. You'll find it at weidelonwinning.com. Join us over there, and thanks for being part of our community.